In the year 1307, on a Friday the 13th, armed men descended upon Templar commanderies across France with merciless precision. Knights were dragged from their prayers, their libraries ransacked, their secrets hunted with a fervor that spoke not merely of political ambition, but of existential terror. What knowledge did these warrior monks possess that warranted such systematic obliteration? What texts did they safeguard in hidden chambers beneath Temple Church and in the vaults of their fortresses, from Jerusalem to Scotland? The official charges spoke of heresy and idol worship, but beneath the accusations lay a deeper anxiety, that the Templars had unearthed something in the rubble of Solomon's temple, something that threatened the very foundations of ecclesiastical authority. As the Gnostic Gospel of Philip declares, those who say they will die first and then rise are in error, if they do not first receive the resurrection while they live. When they die, they will receive nothing. This resurrection while living, this gnosis of divine union, lies at the heart of what the Templars discovered and what their alleged scrolls reveal: a Christ inseparable from Sophia, a salvation contingent not upon institutional mediation, but upon inner alchemy and sacred marriage. To understand what the Templars may have found, you must first grasp the landscape of 12th century Jerusalem. When these French knights arrived in the Holy Land in 1119, they established their headquarters directly atop the ruins of Solomon's Temple, the very site where the Holy of Holies once stood. For 9 years, before they officially became a military order, a small group of these knights conducted what they claimed were excavations to protect pilgrims. Modern archaeological evidence suggests extensive tunneling beneath the Temple Mount dating to this period. What were they seeking in the darkness below? Medieval legends whispered of lost gospels, of texts the early church fathers had condemned and buried, of scrolls that presented a Christ far removed from the sanitized savior of orthodox doctrine. The Templars emerged from this period transformed, suddenly wealthy and mysteriously learned in esoteric traditions that bore striking resemblance to Gnostic Christianity, Hermetic philosophy, and the sacred feminine wisdom that had been systematically expunged from Western spiritual consciousness. The connection between Christ and Sophia in Gnostic cosmology is not a romantic metaphor, but a precise description of cosmic mechanics and human potential. In the Apocryphon of John, discovered among the Nag Hammadi texts that confirm what heresiologists like Irenaeus reluctantly documented, Sophia emerges as the divine feminine principle whose passion and longing precipitate creation itself. She is not merely God's consort, but the active agent of divine thought made manifest, the bridge between the unknowable monad and the material realm. When Sophia conceives without her consort, when she attempts creation through solitary will, she gives birth to the demiurge, the flawed architect of the material cosmos who mistakes himself for the supreme God. This is the shadow creator worshipped in conventional religion, the jealous deity of law and limitation. But Sophia does not abandon her creation. She descends, fragmenting herself into countless sparks of divine consciousness imprisoned in matter, waiting for the liberator who can restore her to wholeness. This liberator is the Christos, not as a singular historical figure, but as a principle of awakening, the divine consciousness that reunites Sophia's scattered essence and guides her ascent back to the pleroma, the fullness of divine being. What the alleged Templar scrolls illuminate is how this Gnostic narrative was never truly extinct, but merely driven underground, preserved in symbols and ceremonies that appear orthodox on the surface, but encode profound heterodoxy beneath. Consider the Templar veneration of the Black Madonna, those dark-faced icons found in their chapels across Europe. Orthodox explanations speak of candle smoke and Byzantine influence, but the esoteric truth runs deeper. The Black Madonna represents Sophia in her fallen state, the divine feminine obscured by matter yet pregnant with transformative potential. She is Isis mourning Osiris, Inanna descending to the underworld, Persephone in Hades, all cultural expressions of the same archetypal pattern. The Templars understood that matter itself is not evil, but rather divine essence in a state of amnesia, and that the path of return requires descent before ascent, dissolution before reintegration. Their alleged scrolls reportedly contained specific practices for what they called the marriage of the sun and moon, alchemical language for the union of masculine solar consciousness with feminine lunar wisdom, the same sacred marriage depicted in the Gnostic Gospel of Philip, where the bridal chamber sacrament represents the ultimate mystery. This brings us to the practical dimension of Templar Gnosis, for unlike philosophical speculation, Gnostic teaching always aims at experiential transformation. The scrolls allegedly described initiatory practices remarkably similar to those documented in Tantric Buddhism and Hermetic alchemy, the cultivation of an inner androgen, a unified consciousness transcending gender polarity. In Tantric tradition, the practitioner visualizes and embodies both Shiva and Shakti, masculine consciousness and feminine energy, until they merge in the central channel of the subtle body. The Hermetic alchemists spoke of this same process through the symbol of the rebis, the two-headed figure combining king and queen, sun and moon, sulfur and mercury. What the Templars possessed, according to fragmentary evidence and persistent legend, was a Christianized version of this ancient technology of consciousness, a method for awakening the Christ principle within by reuniting it with the Sophia essence that had been projected outward and forgotten. Imagine yourself in a candlelit chamber, deep beneath a Templar preceptory, the stone walls absorbing sound until even breath seems muted. Before you stands not a crucifix, but a more ancient symbol, a tree bearing both flowers and fruit, its roots descending into darkness, while its crown reaches toward invisible light. This is the same axis mundi found in Kabbalistic mysticism as the tree of life, in Norse tradition as Yggdrasil, in shamanic cultures worldwide as the cosmic pillar connecting underworld, middle world, and heaven. A senior knight, his white mantle marked with the red cross, guides you through a meditation. You are to descend first, following the roots into the earth, into memory, into the fragmented Sophia trapped in matter. There you encounter the shadow, the demiurgic consciousness that believes separation is ultimate reality. But you do not battle this shadow. You recognize it as divine essence in confusion, and through compassionate awareness, you begin to transmute it. As you hold this darkness in the light of witnessing consciousness, something shifts. The Christos is not coming from outside to save you. The Christos is what emerges when you stop abandoning the Sophia within, when you cease projecting divinity elsewhere and recognize that the sacred marriage occurs in the sanctuary of your own being. If you enjoy this content and want to delve deeper, access the Hidden Codex Library. Register now to get full access to the Internet's largest collection of Gnostic and esoteric wisdom, available in eBooks, audiobooks, videos, and music. Link in the description and pinned comment. This understanding directly challenges the transactional soteriology of institutional Christianity, which posits salvation as something bestowed by external authority through prescribed rituals. The Gnostic Christ-Sophia union reveals salvation as an internal alchemy, a psychological and spiritual process of reintegrating dissociated aspects of consciousness. Modern depth psychology, particularly Jungian analysis, has rediscovered this ancient wisdom through different language. Carl Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the contrasexual elements of the psyche that must be integrated for individuation, mirrors precisely the Gnostic teaching of reuniting Christ and Sophia. When Jung described the self as emerging from the union of conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine principles, He was articulating in contemporary terms what the Gnostics knew and what the Templars allegedly preserved, that wholeness requires the marriage of opposites, that divinity is not transcendent authority, but immanent wholeness. The suppression of this teaching becomes comprehensible when you recognize what it threatens. A Christianity centered on the Christ-Sophia union empowers individuals to seek direct gnosis rather than mediated salvation. It honors the feminine as equal and essential rather than subordinate and suspect. It locates ultimate authority in inner experience rather than institutional hierarchy. Most radically, it suggests that the material world is not a fallen realm to be transcended through obedience, but divine substance to be recognized and transformed through awareness. This is precisely the heresy that Orthodox Christianity could not tolerate, the reason Gnostic texts were burned and Gnostic communities scattered, and ultimately why the Templars had to be destroyed when their knowledge became too visible, their power too autonomous, their gnosis too threatening to papal supremacy. Yet, the teaching survived, encoded in unexpected places. The Tarot's high priestess, seated between pillars of severity and mercy, bearing the scroll of hidden law, she is Sophia, guarding esoteric wisdom. The Lover's card, depicting the sacred marriage, encodes the Christ-Sophia union. Freemasonry, which drew heavily from Templar tradition, preserved fragments of this gnosis in degrees and symbols that speak of rebuilding the temple, not the external structure in Jerusalem, but the interior temple, where consciousness and matter, spirit and soul, Christ and Sophia reunite. Even in cathedral architecture, the Gothic innovations the Templars funded reveal this hidden teaching. The rose windows flooding naves with colored light represent Sophia's beauty, illuminating material form. The pointed arches, drawing the eye upward while remaining grounded below, embody the principle of sacred marriage, transcendence and immanence held in dynamic balance. The practical application of this teaching in your own life requires neither medieval ceremony nor esoteric initiation. Though these can serve as powerful catalysts, what it demands is a fundamental reorientation of consciousness. Begin by noticing where you have externalized your divinity, projected your Sophia into romantic partners or spiritual authorities, abandoned your Christ nature by believing yourself fundamentally flawed and in need of external salvation. The practice is to call these projections home, to recognize that what you have sought in others or in institutions exists as potential within your own psyche. When you encounter darkness in yourself, rage, fear, shame, desire, do not wage war against it as Orthodox religion prescribes. Instead, approach it as you would approach Sophia fallen into matter, with compassion and curiosity, recognizing divine essence confused about its nature. This is the alchemical solve et coagula, the dissolution and reintegration that transforms lead into gold, fragmentation into wholeness. The alleged Templar scrolls, whether they physically exist in some hidden archive or survive only as whispered tradition, point toward a perennial teaching that refuses to be extinguished. They remind you that the sacred marriage is not ancient history, but eternal present, that every moment offers the possibility of reuniting Christ and Sophia within the temple of your own awareness. When you cease dividing reality into spirit versus matter, good versus evil, male versus female, you begin to perceive the play of divine consciousness expressing itself through apparent opposites, and in that perception, gnosis dawns. This is the resurrection while living that the Gospel of Philip describes, the awakening that no external authority can grant or withhold because it is your birthright, the natural state of consciousness when it stops fragmenting itself through identification with partial perspectives. If these words have stirred something ancient within you, if you sense that you are remembering rather than learning for the first time, you are ready to go deeper. Here, on this platform, we continue to decode the hidden wisdom that orthodox narratives buried, to resurrect the gnosis that transforms not through belief, but through direct experience. Each exploration you engage with strengthens the egregore of awakening, the collective field of consciousness seeking to remember its wholeness. Subscribe not merely to receive content, but to align yourself with a lineage of seekers who have always known that truth cannot be destroyed, only temporarily concealed, waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear to recognize it once again as their own deepest nature, the Christ and Sophia reunited in the sacred chamber of awareness itself.